So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here today. For those that don't know me, my name is Nicole Kittredge, and I am your experienced and reputable senior loan originator with Envoy Mortgage. Partnering today with Corning and Simone, a real estate attorney named Catherine Collins, bringing you this excellent speaker.
Hear that?
Our guest this morning's speaker is Michael Copperwhite. He is a motivational speaker. Today, he will help you discover the driving forces behind your behaviors and share the secrets of using your brain to live on purpose, thus affording you the opportunity to live your best life. Michael has shared these life-changing concepts for colleges and universities, financial institutions, and other private enterprises. His topics include mindset shifts for success, overcoming self-limiting beliefs, personal development, and leadership. Michael is certified as a speaker and presenter by the John Maxwell team, who is the foremost authority on leadership training. Previously, Michael has spent many years in the hospitality industry, as well as holding various corporate sales positions before starting his own business in 1990. He owned and operated a home gourmet food delivery business for 25 years, which he sold in 2016. Among Michael's many accomplishments, he's most proud of being a dad. He has twins that are 28 years old. His daughter Jenna is a nurse who is in New Hampshire, and his son Zach is in the golf industry in Lakeland, Florida. Michael enjoys yoga, flying, playing the drums. I've had the pleasure of seeing him speak many times, and he does not disappoint. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Michael Copperwhite.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you.
You're welcome.
He does not disappoint. No pressure there. 158 years ago yesterday, Abe Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. So this was a big battle in the midst of the Civil War, and they were there memorializing 51,000 boys, really, who died in Gettysburg. And Lincoln was kind of an afterthought in the invitation list. He said, you're going to have a few minutes at the end of this to close this day out. They were all there for this main speaker. There was a guy named Edward Everett, who was from Massachusetts. And everybody loved this guy. He was known as the golden-tongued orator. So Everett went on to speak for 2.5 hours that day. And when Lincoln got up, Lincoln delivered 272 words in 2 minutes. And later on, newspapers said it was the perfect piece of American eloquence. Even Edward Everett himself said that Lincoln, with his 2 minutes, captured America's heart. So Everett, in his 2.5-hour speech, actually set a record that day for the longest speech in U.S. history. So you'll be relieved to know I'm not here to break any records today. We're just going to have some fun. You know, when I get introduced as a motivational speaker, I think about one of my mentors, John Maxwell, who I heard him say, I'd rather be introduced as a motivational teacher. He says, a motivational speaker will make you feel good, but the next day you forget why, right? So I really want to bring you some tools today, some ideas and some things you can take from here to really have a positive impact on what you're trying to get done in your life and on your journey. That's my goal today. I was thinking about the word perspective, and perspective just means like the way you look at a situation. And I always enjoy having my perspective changed by talking to somebody else of a different opinion, saying, you know, this happened yesterday with a conversation I was having. And I love having my perspective changed on something. And I was thinking about the words millions, billions, and trillions, and how we kind of throw these words around, not as if they're synonymous, but they rhyme, and I don't think we have much of a concept of how vastly different these numbers are. So I got thinking about a unit of measurement to kind of come up with this, and I was thinking about time, and I thought, why not use a second? So 1 second, a unit of time. 1,000,000 seconds. So how long is that? 1,000,000 seconds ago, here we are on Saturday morning. 1,000,000 seconds ago was 12 days ago. So a week ago last Tuesday was 1,000,000 seconds ago. 1,000,000,000 seconds ago, and as I was doing this math, if you're anything like me, I'm thinking 1,000,000,000 seconds must be earlier this year, right? Or maybe even like pre-COVID. It can't be pre-COVID, that's a long time ago, right? 1,000,000,000 seconds ago, it was 1988. Die Hard was in the box office, #1 in the box office. Like, wow. I'm really glad you're sitting down for the end of this. 1 trillion seconds ago, it was 29,000 BC. Isn't that crazy? So why do I bring this up? What are we talking about all these numbers for? Millions, billions, and trillions. My idea here is to talk about, as Nicole said, the brain and how we can use this thing. So here's a brain. We all have one of these. Have you had some of those conversations with people out there and you've walked away from that conversation thinking, I'm pretty sure this person doesn't have one of these? The average human brain weighs 3 pounds. Remember that billions and trillions thing. If we took a piece of the brain the size of a grain of sand, like barely visible to the naked eye, in that piece of brain the size of a grain of sand, there are 100,000 brain cells. We call them neurons. And they all talk to each other. They communicate with something called synapses. So in that little piece of brain, there are 1 billion communications happening. In a piece of your brain the size of a grain of sand. 1 billion. Remember that number? That's big. How many pieces of brain, this is hard to say, the size of a grain of sand make up a 3-pound brain? 300,000 grains of sand sized pieces of the brain. So now we got 300,000 billion communications, which is the same number as 30,000 trillion communications happening in your brain at any one time. How many of you guys feel better about yourself already? Like, all right, I'm good, right? It's staggering what this instrument can do for us if we start to learn about what goes on with this and how can we use this to our benefit. We're all out there working and setting goals and working hard. How can we use this to our advantage? So surprisingly, before we get into this, we have to talk about, are there a couple things around the brain and the way it naturally works that are going to get in our way? We're goal setters, we're achievers, we're most self-employed, we're working hard in life. Are there some things about the brain naturally that are going to get in our way? There are 2 of them. The brain has 2 main priorities. The first one is safety, and the second one is efficiency. So safety to the brain means no change. Safety means I like it just the way it is. The brain needs to keep itself safe because it wants to evolve and continue itself into future generations like it's been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. So the brain likes no change at all. Think about this as your brain, this sleeping lion, right? Peaceful, almost cute. What do you not want to do to a sleeping lion? You don't want to wake him up, right? And when you set a goal that requires some sort of change. Have you ever set a goal that required a behavior change? Have you ever set a goal that didn't require a behavior change? That wakes up the lion who likes it just the way it is. And so when you say, we're going to make some significant changes and I'm going to do this and this and this, like the Monday after Thanksgiving we just talked about, this wakes up the lion who says, what's this you're talking about doing? Because I like it just the way it is and I'm in control. Right? And so when we set a goal, you ever set a goal and been really excited about it, and then when it came time to start the work, you kind of go, man, I got no motivation. I was excited about this when I said it. Anybody ever do that? That's the lion winning, because your brain can literally sap your motivation for something new because it doesn't want to do it. It likes it just the way it is. So the first lesson about how the brain can get in our way because of this safety thing is when you set a goal and then you just don't have the energy to do it, that's completely normal. And you got to push through that. And you've already experienced it, but now maybe I'm putting some words to what you've already experienced. You know, waiting around to be motivated doesn't happen. I'm a motivational speaker. That doesn't just happen, you know. Like I'm going to wait to get struck by, you know, the motivation gods. That's not what happens. Have you ever started doing something you weren't really psyched about, but then a half an hour and you're like, I kind of like this, now I'm moving along. Action creates the emotion. So very normal to set a goal and then have to go to work and not have the juice for it, normal. And you got to push through because that's your brain. The second priority of the brain is efficiency. And how does this get in our way? Efficiency means the brain's got a certain amount of energy that it's going to use to run our lives. And it doesn't want to waste any of it on stuff that we just do over and over again and repeat. And so when it recognizes something that we do over and over and over again, it can relegate it to an automatic behavior, also called a habit. And so when the brain recognizes it, the brain can say, I don't have to do anything here. I can just relegate that to this automatic behavior. How many of you this morning thought of every single step involved with brushing your teeth? None of us. Because as soon as you reach for that toothbrush, the brain says, I know what we're about to do, and I have to spend 0 energy. Boom, automatic behavior, or a habit, right? Habits are formed over time by repeating certain thoughts, feelings, and behaviors until they become firmly embedded as a memory. So a habit is just a memory put there by the brain. How many of you driving here today thought of every single intricate step with driving your car? Not since we were 16, we haven't done that. You ever gotten somewhere and said, I don't even remember driving here? You ever done that? How scary is that? Don't tell your insurance agent that one. So incredibly efficient, yes? How is this possibly going to get in our way? Would it surprise you to find out that 15 or 20% of our daily routine is run by automatic behavior or habit? Would it surprise you to find out that 40 or 50% of our daily routine is run by habit? Would it surprise you to find out that 90% of our daily routine is run by automatic behavior and habits? 90%. Incredibly efficient, but how is that getting in our way? I don't think we don't need to think anymore. We can just show up to life and not think at all, and life will unfold itself. We'll run through another day, and we'll do it again tomorrow. And next week and next month and next year and next decade, we don't even really need to think. And thinking is really important for putting together your future life, what you're trying to get done. It's really important to think. And most people don't, we don't need to anymore. Henry Ford said, and this is a long time ago, Henry Ford said, thinking is some of the hardest work that there is, which is why so few people engage in it, right? And we almost don't even need to anymore. And it's really important that you set aside time somehow in our crazy busy lives to actually just stop and think. John Maxwell says, if you have a place to think thoughts, you'll think thoughts. Like he actually sets time aside to do it. So part of what I'm here to do today is to implore you to think and take the time to think. And it's funny, I wanted to use the word implore because it felt dramatic, right? But I actually went and looked it up. And it means to beg earnestly. So I'm going to beg you earnestly to think and set aside time to think. It's vitally important to what it is you're trying to get done. And it's fascinating to realize that we don't really even need to. We've kind of been trained not to have to. And it's a really important piece of kind of what you're trying to get to. So this is a perfect analogy for our minds, the iceberg. We got a conscious mind, right? We have a subconscious mind. So an iceberg, as you know, the top 10% of the iceberg represents what we can see. 90% of the iceberg is invisible and under the sea. Much like our minds. So we have a conscious mind. That's the top 10%. And our conscious mind, we're doing our thinking, this is what we do. We run our lives in our conscious mind. 90% of that mind is invisible under the water. It's our subconscious. And we've all heard the term subconscious. We've heard a bunch of things around it. The subconscious is an amazing instrument within an instrument. The subconscious is a database that stores everything that's ever happened to you. Every thought, every event, every emotion, it's all there. Nothing's been forgotten. So that's number one. The subconscious also doesn't know the difference. This is interesting because it doesn't do any judging, it doesn't do any reasoning, it doesn't make any decisions, it just takes orders from the conscious mind and supports it. So the subconscious mind does not know the difference between something real and something that we vividly imagine. Like, for example, just close your eyes for a second and think about a successful you, whatever that means. I'm being purposely vague. It might be a shape of you, it might be where you are, who you're with, what you're standing in front of, how you're dressed. A successful you, as you just picture that, your subconscious doesn't know that that's not real yet. It doesn't know. It just sees it as truth and says, okay. That's kind of how that starts to work. And so if you think, for example, and we got to be careful how we talk about ourselves. You have that friend of yours, like I do, who's late for everything. I got a couple of nods, yes, right? Yeah. And they just texted you, by the way, said, I'm on my way, save me a seat, right? So if they're anything like the friends I have who are late, and they start to talk about themselves being late, it's almost like they're bragging, like it's a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm late for everything. It's like, I don't know, this is their watch. That's what they wear, right? When they say, I'm late for everything, the subconscious just hears that as truth. And then what it does is it goes into the database, everything that's ever happened to you, to come up with experience to support that statement. And so that's what happens. So we've got to be careful what we say about ourselves out loud because our subconscious hears it as truth. If that person were to say, and this is a gigantic what if, but if that late person, if that friend of yours who's always late were to say, I enjoy being early for everything, two things are going to happen. The conscious mind, the top 10% of that filter, is going to say, who are you kidding? You're late for, you know that, what are you talking about? But if you can get that statement past that big filter, which is a tremendous filter in our conscious mind, The subconscious is just going to hear that as truth. Oh, you're early. Let me go into the database, everything that's ever happened to you, and come up with experiences to prove to you that you're always early. It's fascinating. And so we have a self-concept that we've been given, programmed onto us by the time we were 5 years old. We had nothing to do with it, by the way. And all of our subconscious does is support it in its daily routine. Brian Tracy, one of my favorites, said the role of the subconscious mind is to keep all of your words and your actions and your behaviors consistent with your self-concept. So that's the role of the subconscious. What if we were to start to redefine what our self-concept is? Because this is in our control. I didn't realize that there was a self-concept I had that was running me. It just does. And now as we start to have an awareness of like, oh, I have a self-concept, that's in my control. What if we started to picture something that we want to live? What if we started to picture a life that like, yeah, that's what I want to do, and we started to focus on that? Would our subconscious then go into the database, accepting it as true, and support that vision, and then bring thoughts and beliefs back to our conscious mind to support that? Have you ever, I know the answer to this already, set a goal and been excited about it, minutes later have it chased away by your mind saying, that's not you, who you think you are, that's not for you, that's not our kind of thing. You are fill in the blank with something awful that you're telling yourself. You ever done this? Please say yes. I don't want to feel too alone in that whole thing. But as we start to develop an awareness around this self-concept idea, now it's in our control. And this is what I call living on purpose. Because we have the choice, as we start to learn about how this brain works, to do just that, to live on purpose. Because we get to recreate what that self-concept starts to look like. This all starts, how do we do this? This all starts in our imagination. Our imaginations are really strong muscles. This is a great, oh, not that one. Imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Einstein said this. If there was one person that I would have to pick to say nothing is more important than knowledge, it would be Einstein, right? Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. It all starts there in our imagination. Our imagination is a really strong muscle. It's been exercised for decades in the gym of life. But I'll submit to you that it has been incorrectly exercised for all these years, and it's not supporting us because, as humans, we tend to focus on stuff that we don't want to have happen to us versus what we do want to have happen. Why is this? Hundreds of thousands of years ago, this kept us alive. This mindset of what's the worst case scenario all the time, right? I mean, how many, do I have any list makers? I love my to-do list. You got a to-do list? Hundreds of thousands of years ago, the to-do list was leave the cave, stay alive, come back to the cave. And the way you did that was by thinking worst case scenario. And we stay alive, you know. Here we are in 2021. The chances of us leaving here today and being mauled by a saber-toothed tiger are almost zero, but we've still got the same brain. It's that same DNA. We have an evolutionary predisposition to being negative. It just fits our stuff. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine this week who I grew up with, and I was talking about this, and I was suggesting, you know, going out into the woods to explore was perfectly safe and cool to do in 1974 when I was doing this with my friend. We lived on this town in Long Island on this peninsula, and at the end of the peninsula was where all like the big houses were, but there was thousands of acres of just woods. We were 11 years old, and we would make sandwiches and pack a bag and ride our bikes 6 or 7 miles out to this place, to these woods, and then walk the bikes as far as we could into the woods and then just keep going. And we'd be there all day. We'd build lean-tos, we were building forts in the woods, and then we'd come back and find our bikes and ride 6 or 7 miles home at 11 years old. I know, where are the parents, right? How do we get away with this? But it was a really safe, fun thing to do. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, let's go explore got you killed. And survival of the fittest, really, it was imprinted upon us. The more negative you can be, and the more worst case scenario you can be thinking about, the longer you're going to live. And we're still dealing with that same brain, right? So in the absence of constant monitoring, our ability to allow ourselves to think certain things, it's in our control. In the absence of that monitoring, we will always gravitate to the negative. It's just what we do. I do it. We all do it. In the absence of constant monitoring, our brains always gravitate to the negative. Have you ever become aware of a thought you were having and then said, oh my God, that is awful. Where's that coming from? You ever done this? John Assaraf calls them ants, A-N-T, automatic negative thoughts. They just happen. And it's a comfort level for us. For example, have you ever heard anybody say, that's too good to be true? Like every other day, right? You hear some story, there's a real estate investment that's too good to be true. There's some kid who is healed miraculously and he's healthy, and we're so quick to write off anything positive because it doesn't jive with our DNA. That's too good to be true. It's become a cliche. Have you ever heard anybody say, that's too awful to be true? No, you have never heard anyone say. You know why? No one's ever said that. The worse, the better. Did you hear about the school bus and the oil tanker and the explosion, the flame? Oh my God, tell me more. We're like, oh, I can't wait for more. It's crazy, but that's what goes on. So remember that. We have an evolutionary predisposition to being negative. And in the absence of constant monitoring, we're always going to gravitate towards the negative. But that's in our control. And so, again, on this imagination piece, I have a friend of mine who's famous for saying, the story in your mind becomes the story in your life. So think about that. The story in your mind, it starts here, becomes the story in your life. It all starts here, right? The law of correspondence says that our outer life must correspond with our inner thoughts and beliefs. Anything else doesn't work. So our outer life corresponds with our inner beliefs. Everything in the physical world, this building was an idea in someone's head before it became a building. What you drove here in today was an idea in someone's head before it became a car. Everything in our physical world was an idea. So that's why the imagination is so important. Oprah. We all know Oprah. God, how about the wisdom? This is cool. Create the highest, grandest possible vision of your life because you become what you believe about yourself. And so that belief is the big one. How do we kind of get back around that? Your future life has to be today's idea. I'll actually go a step further. Your future life is absolutely going to be today's idea. What are you thinking about? Because that's what's going to manifest itself. And that's in our control. If you leave that to happen, because you can, like I said, we could just show up to life and let it unfold for you. But if you leave that future idea and don't do the thinking, you're basically guaranteeing yourself a future that you didn't have a lot of say in. If you leave it to happenstance, what are the odds you're going to be thrilled with it when it shows up for you? And it's in our control to do this. Think about this. If you were to picture a successful you and focus on that, this is fascinating. The law of subconscious activity says that whatever you repeat over and over to yourself in your conscious mind will eventually be accepted by your subconscious mind, which controls everything. So, everything I've ever heard from some of the most successful people I've ever listened to, or I was just listening to a podcast last week. There was a guy, Patrick Grove is his name. And the host of the podcast was a guy I listened to a lot. And he said, I ran into this friend of mine in this coffee shop and he's scribbling crazy on this notepad. And he's like, what are you working on? What's going on? He goes, I'm trying to figure out a way to make $100 million in 12 months. And then he did it. Fascinating, right? Then this guy goes on to start 5 companies. He's the chairman of the board of 4 of them with a total value of over $1 billion. And the 5th company he sold to Rupert Murdoch for $750 million. And he's talking about he spent a lot of his time journaling, writing out what his life is going to look like, his future life. He writes it out. He's spending time thinking thoughts and writing out what he wants his life to look like. And then he says, I spend all my time thinking about it as much as I can. This is the opposite of not controlling that because our brain's going to think something. And so the best time to be accessing the subconscious, another thing we talked about the subconscious being a database, and we talked about it not knowing the difference between something real and something vividly imagined. It also never sleeps. In fact, it does its most work when we're asleep. Have you ever gone to bed with a question on your mind and woke up with the answer? I know you have. It's fascinating. I was with this group of people one night, not too far. I was in Grafton. It's some like bar or tavern, and there was a band playing, and all these tables it was trivia night. And so this band was playing 70s TV theme songs. And somehow the table I was at determined that I was like the go-to person. It might have been me saying, I've got this, right? It could have been me, but they're relying on me. And here comes this song, and I have got it. But I couldn't get it from my brain to my mouth to save my life. I'm just like, oh my God. So much so, I was going nuts that they were all laughing at me, and strangers were laughing at me. And I literally said to them, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to go to bed tonight. I'll wake up tomorrow morning and I'll have the answer in 5 minutes. And I did. Because the subconscious never stops. It just churns and churns and churns. And as soon as we go to sleep and our conscious mind shuts down with that filter, saying things out loud like I did, like, I can't believe I'm such an idiot that I can't remember. How's that for a command to the subconscious, right? It's not going to come up with it. That goes to sleep and the subconscious just keeps churning, and there it was. So the best time to access the subconscious for our sakes is when we are going to sleep and we're just at that point where we're not full. You're conscious enough to say, oh yeah, that guy in Medway told me to think about something I want, right? Or when you're waking up in the morning and you're in that little la-la space and you're just conscious enough to say, oh yeah, this is the time I'm supposed to visualize what I want. That's the time to be doing. And then of course as much time as you can between then and every other time. But that's why that's so important, because the more you impress upon that, that will change. If we start to change our self-concept, will that change how our subconscious mines all the database to bring thoughts and beliefs back to our conscious mind to support that? Yeah, absolutely will. This is where I sometimes get some pushback from an audience. I'll say, all right, let me get this straight. You're telling me that, number one, it's the role of the subconscious to support my self-concept. Yes. And you're telling me that the subconscious doesn't know the difference between something real and something vividly imagined, right? So you're telling me, now they get a little, right, that I can just picture something I want, a life that I would like to lead, and my subconscious will actually support that instead of sabotage me? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is what we call living on purpose and having an understanding of how this crazy brain of ours works and what we can do about it. So, I've been using the word vivid a lot. Subconscious doesn't know the difference between something real and something vividly imagined. What does vividly mean? Vividly means bring some emotion to it. If you were already living the life that we've been talking about, would you have some emotion around that? Oh, wouldn't you, right? Happiness and joy and gratitude and excitement and all of that. It'd be phenomenal. There'd be emotion there. If you can, I won't say if, I know you can. People tell me they can't. I know you can. When you can visualize, if you can conjure up the emotion to go with that, this makes this 50 times more powerful on your subconscious. I was talking to somebody who literally was able to have goosebumps as they thought about stuff. And I said, and somebody once said to me, I don't think I can do that. And I said, I know for a fact you can do it. And they said, you seem pretty clear about that. And I said, Hollywood makes billions of dollars on the fact that you're already an expert at this. Has anybody ever cried at a movie? You cried at Ghostbusters? Okay. Has anybody ever laughed at a movie? You ever been scared out of your wits at a movie? Hollywood knows that we're experts at creating emotion with visuals that aren't real. They're making billions of dollars on the fact that we're good at this. So what if we did it for ourselves? Now this takes some practice. I will promise you tonight as you're laying in bed, I give you 10 seconds, tops, to start to try to do this and stick with it, because our brains are all over the place. So like anything, when you're doing something new, we're going to stumble, we're going to fall. You just got to keep practicing and keep doing it. And here's why all of this is so important, and we'll bring it right back down to your life and our results, right to our pocketbooks. This formula is always at work. Interesting. We have results in we have a health result. We've got a wealth result. You have a spiritual result. We've got friends and relationship results. We have results in every area of our life, right? Sometimes we want to change a result. Anybody want to change a result? The results we have are a result of the actions we take towards it. Our actions are driven by our emotional state, and our emotions come from our thoughts and our beliefs, mostly about us and this self-concept we're dragging around. So if you want to change the results you're having, it's not enough to just change actions. That's sales training. That's right where it stops. Change your actions, and let's talk about actions and all this stuff and ClickFunnels and That's sales training. If you want to change the results, you've got to go all the way back to the beginning and change how you think and believe about yourself. And it's easy to say it, but you're getting some tools today to understand how to go about doing that. So this 18 months of quarantine and COVID has been crazy and bizarre. I've been telling people that I became a gardener during this quarantine. The truth is, I became a manual laborer for a gardener during this quarantine. And I got this area in my backyard. We said, let's make a garden. And so we kind of figured, let's go 6 feet off that corner and maybe 20 feet this way, and then we'll do this. Any gardeners? Wow, a lot of work, right? But rewarding. I didn't know about the rewarding part up front. I was the manual laborer, unpaid, by the way. And I got down on my hands and knees with the ripped jeans and the boots and the t-shirt, and I had that little three-pronger, what's that, that, and I'm pulling up grass, and I'm kicking rocks out, and I'm trying to separate the dirt from the grass, and I think I was 10 or 11 hours in to get 6 feet by 20 feet just to have it look like dirt. That was it was dirt. Then comes the work. Now we got the holes and we got the plantings and we've got the fertilizer, the watering, twice a day watering, early and late, right? And I think I was 3 days into this on my hands and knees in the dirt, and I realized like you just had oh, I get this. This is kind of cool. It was very, I don't know what it was. It was cathartic and like back to nature. But it took me some time to get there. And then the weeding, my God, what's up with the weeds, right? So gardening, weeds, do weeds need any fertilizer or care? They just grow. But it's an incredibly rewarding idea. There was a book written in 1903 by James Allen called As a Man Thinketh, 1903. And in this book, he talked about the garden. He says here, whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are found, an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall, accumulate, and reproduce their own kind. An abundance of useless weed seeds, right? So what's it saying? Whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If you care for it and cultivate the garden, beautiful. If you don't, that's fine too. The garden's going to grow something. The garden must and will bring forth. It's going to grow, that's what it does. It's up to you to determine what it's going to grow. Make sense? He goes on in the book to liken the garden to the human mind. Now we're back. The human mind may be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. So intelligently cultivated, what does that mean? We have the choice to think thoughts and to monitor what's going on and catch a thought and go, that's not serving me, let me think something different. We can cultivate it. Or, our choice, we can allow it to run wild. Either way, the mind must and will bring forth. The mind's going to think something, whether you're in control or not. Make sense? So that's kind of cool. What an opportunity we have there. And this is one of my favorite quotes ever. Brian Tracy, the way you think and feel about yourself, including your expectations about what is possible for you, determines everything you do and everything that happens to you. Wow. The way you think and feel about yourself, including your expectations about what you believe is possible for you, self-concept, determines everything you do and everything that happens to you. So if you take this back to our formula, the way you think and feel about yourself, including your expectations about what you believe is possible for you, determines everything you do, actions, and everything that happens to you results. That's where it all starts. Fascinating. No thought lives in your head rent-free. One of my favorite one-liners ever. Isn't that powerful? There was a book written by, anybody know T. Harv Eker? He wrote a book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And in this book, I remember exactly where I was when I read this one sentence, because we've been talking about this for some time, and in one sentence in this book, the book is more than one sentence, but in the book there was this one sentence, and in this one sentence, he completely captivated this entire concept of the limitations that we place on ourselves and our potential because of all these self-limiting behaviors and all this negative programming that we've got. And in one sentence, he got it. If a 100-foot oak tree had the mind of a human, it would grow to be 10 feet tall. You can take a picture of that with your phone if you want. No extra charge on that one. That think about what we're leaving on the table for our potential simply by not being aware of all the stuff we're talking about, because this is completely in our control to be aware of what we're thinking about and edit out the stuff that doesn't support us and then take on the stuff that will support us. We talked earlier about that idea about having a goal, setting this goal, having some excitement about it, having immediately chased away by your brain saying that's not for you. What that is your subconscious keeping your thoughts, actions, and beliefs consistent with your self-concept, which is I'm not worthy of that. But you can change that self-concept. And that's, again, what we're talking about in terms of living on purpose. Powerful stuff. Let me kind of transition here. I'm trying to think about where I need you. So imagine this. Here you are sitting here in your college class about to take a final exam. How do you feel? I was starting to sweat just writing this material, like, oh God, I hated that. Who are the good students? Anyone who was, Ryan, you strike me as a good student kind of guy. Any great students? Are you just not want to say anything because it's going to sound like you're bragging? I'd love to know if you're a good student. I was at this retreat recently. There were 7 people, and we were away this week. It's a mastermind group, and we've been doing business together for years. We thought, let's get away and get to know each other. So we rent this big house up in Conway, and we get the meals split up and all this stuff. And one guy comes up with this great idea. You probably played this game before. 3 truths and a lie. So you got to come up with 4 statements, and you say them out loud, and one of them's a lie, and everyone has to pick which one's the lie. Sounds fun. And it's also kind of a cool way to kind of get to know people. So I was the last one to go. And I was the only one, I stumped the entire room. I was the one who won because nobody got my lie, which was I graduated in the top 10% of my class in high school and college. And they thought that was the truth. And so I remember saying, I am so thankful for all of your belief in me, but I'm the guy who made the top half of the class possible, if you know what that means. So student-wise, so here we are sitting in a college, we're about to take a final exam. So that's where I kind of need you space-wise. Imagine that this is not just any final exam. Imagine that you're about to take the final exam in the most important class in your life. I'll add some stress to it. Whew. Man, it's all coming back, isn't it? I remember all that stress. What if the class was called life? What if you were about to take the final exam in life? When do you take the final exam in life? And what if you found out ahead of time that the professor said, okay, it's an open book test. It's essay questions. We're going to give them to you ahead of time. Oh, I feel better already. Don't you? Just now I got it. If that happened, would you do something with that information? Open book test? I'm showing up prepared. Yeah, we would. This is a woman named Bronnie Ware. She's a nurse. She lives in Australia. She's been a nurse for 30 years. For 8 years of her career, she was a home health nurse. And she was taking care of terminal patients who were basically coming home to die at home. And so the average life expectancy of her patients was 3 weeks to 12 weeks. That was it. Coming home, end of my life, and she's there with them 8 hours a day. For 8 years she did this, hundreds of patients. And I got thinking about this. Can you imagine the conversations that she had with these people? Could you imagine the prayers that were uttered and the tears? And I would love to think there was some laughter in there, but these real conversations. And they started talking about their lives and some of the regrets they had. Final exam questions at the end of life, right? And so she started to realize there's a theme here with all these hundreds of people with these regrets. And so she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. What are the chances when we take the final exam that we might have some of these? And these beautiful souls who went before us said, here's the questions. Life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. Some of these are really going to resonate with you. Hopefully, but probably not all of them. I wish I had the courage to live life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. And it almost doesn't take any explanation from me because it means something to you, but I think about that and say, just become aware of things in your life that you've always wanted to do and haven't done yet. And do them. It sounds simple, right? But it's easy because how many times have you thought about that thing you've wanted to do and not done it? And here we are. And it's been years, or in my case, decades on some of these things. Like, why am I not? And then friends would say, just do it. Yeah, I'm busy, I need a little bit more over here business-wise. When the kids get a little, I'll get to it, right? It's a final exam question. And here we have it. Number 2, I wish I didn't work so hard. Wow. I'm positive that on our deathbeds, we're not going to say, I wish I spent more time at the office. Right? That's not going to happen. But what is it? I think that we're set up in our culture today to always work. Yeah, raise your hand if you're a realtor. I think it's almost right? I think you guys are in the hardest profession to not always work. Who has an office you can go to? And who has a home office? And who of you, when your friend says, oh, I'll jump in your car, you go, whoa, I got to clean off this passenger seat. I got everything here. It's going to take me 10 minutes to get a spot for you because you've got a mobile office. You're set up to work all the time. And all I know that this means is carve out some non-work time to do anything that's not work. I don't care when it is or what it is. You probably already know what that is. But it's so important. We're so good at calendaring and keeping ourselves productive. I've talked to people who had a lot of success calendaring free time. Imagine that. That sounds funny, doesn't it? But you got to calendar the free time, but then you got to do it. I wish I didn't work so hard. Woo! I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. How many of you thought of positive feelings when I said that? And how many thought of negative feelings when I said that? Negative, right? I did too. It's interesting. Like you're part of some deal and there's a certain amount of effort expected from 2 people and you end up doing the lion's share and you're bitter. And I don't mean to look at just you saying that, but we've all been through this. And then we don't say anything. Like, oh, and then you become a powder keg. Trust me, I'm an expert right here. And just like, oh. So I had to learn that sharing those negative kind of feelings, that doesn't need to be confrontational. Hey, listen, I'm disappointed the way this went. And here's why. Done. How about the positive feelings? Who needs to hear from you, I love you? I'm so proud of you. When I think about you, I'm inspired. Who needs to hear that? We're so not willing to say that stuff. And with our words, we can really bless someone's life. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. This is a final exam question on life. I wish I stayed in touch with my friends. Number 4. I bet someone just popped to mind for you. And it might not be a friend you fell out of touch with yet. I wish I stayed in touch with my friends. If you just had someone come to mind, please go call that person today. And I don't care. Someone said, what am I supposed to say? Tell them I told you to call. Some guy, and here I am calling you. I wish I stayed in touch with my friends. So important. And finally, number 5, I wish I'd let myself be happier. I learned too late in life that happiness is a choice. Abe Lincoln said that people are about as happy as they make up their mind to be. That's a choice. Talking about habits earlier, happiness can be a choice. I wish I'd let myself be happier. I don't know what that means to you, but I got thinking about these 5, and if we were to take I wish happiness is a choice back to the other 4, if you stayed in touch with your friends, would you be happier? Probably, right? If you expressed your feelings, would you be happier? Or at least less of a powder keg? I'm talking to myself. If you didn't work so hard, would you be happier? Of course. If you lived a life true to you, would you be happier? Yeah, absolutely. Wow, powerful. Final exam questions in life. These beautiful souls who went ahead of us to share with us this information. Their regrets at the end have given us, what a blessing, what an opportunity. We have time to go do something with this information. And I really hope that you do. I really hope you do. Today is when everything that's ever going to happen begins. Today is when everything that's ever going to happen begins. And I hope in this kind of short time we had this morning that I've given you some tools and some ideas to help you with your journey, and I'm so thrilled you invited me onto it. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, don't forget what Dr. Seuss said. You were born to stand out, not to fit in. Be yourself. An amazing doctor. Trust me, yourself is more than enough. And hopefully you get some tools to increase that. Have a great day, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you, Nicole.